Hey guys, welcome to the channel. This is Manish Malli here. So recently in the months of May and June of 2023, I had been to Europe for around 57 days, traveling 19 cities across 4 countries. That's Germany, Spain, Netherlands and France. So in today's video, I will be briefly covering about all the cities I visited, the places I saw, the things I did and all my personal experiences. So if you're interested in a particular city, then look at the timestamp below. Um, Before we get started, here's a little bit about myself. I am an architect by education and a spatial photographer and product designer by profession. So a lot of my travel itineraries revolve around design and architecture, be it historical, be it modern, and Europe was kind of perfect in that regards. So I will also be making detailed videos about each of these cities. So if you are somebody who is planning for Europe and wants to know about how to plan transportation, cost, and other such things, then do consider subscribing to the channel. You can also head over to my Instagram page where I've put detailed highlights of each of these cities. The link is in the description below. So, without further ado, let's get started. The first city on my list is Heidelberg. I was hosted by my sister and her family, so for around one third of the time, I have stayed and lived here like a local, cycling around the city, chilling at the Neckarwies, taking trams, going to the grocery stores, and so on. However, my favorite memory are the ones I spent at the riverside during the sunset hours when the park was full of people and energy. The Heidelberg Castle is also a beautiful place, and the view of the city from there is just amazing. So make sure to not miss it. Next up, we have is Cologne. This is the city I kind of did not expect to visit so many times. I passed by the Cologne station several times while going to France and the Netherlands, as it is on the western border of Germany. I had a college friend studying in the university there, so I stayed in the hostel dorms with her and her friends in Efren. The view of the church as you step outside the railway station is just magnificent, and the interiors of the church are as grandeur as the exteriors. Another favorite place of mine is the cemetery. It's called Melton Friedhof, and it's quite unique in a very different sense. Next up we have is Munich, which is one of the biggest cities in Germany. I stayed in Munich for around 4 days, out of which I stayed in a hostel named Wombat's Hostel near the Hofbahnhof, aka the railway station, for around 2 nights. I made some great friends whom I'm still connected with. And on the weekend, my friend Joanna, who stays in Rosenheim, which is a small city south of Munich, hosted me and showed me around. With her and her family, I had authentic Bavarian dishes and enjoyed the famous Hofbräuhaus beer at the English Garden. Next up, we have is Berlin. Berlin was my last city of the trip, and I'm so glad I didn't miss it. The capital of Germany has so much history, especially about the World War II and its after effects, and that is kind of amplified at almost all of the places. My favorite memory of Berlin, though, is the view of the city that you get from the top of the Berliner Cathedral. It's mesmerizing. Like, make sure you go inside the church. The 10 or 20 euro entry is totally worth it. In my detailed video, I will also talk about the different places like Jewish Museum, Berlin Wall, Brandenburger Tor, and all the other places that I visited. Next city on my list is Stuttgart. This one's for all the car lovers. The Porsche Museum and the Mercedes-Benz Museum should not be missed. The experiential walk talking about the history of these cars is totally worth it. I have shopped quite a few model cars from these museums for myself and my friends, and these are one of my favorite souvenirs from Europe. The last city in Germany is the financial capital, which is Frankfurt. Frankfurt is a good mix of old and new architecture, and has its own charm. And also, being centrally located, it has one of the main airports in Germany. I met a college friend who works there, so we roamed around the streets of the Altstadt and visited the Rommerberg Center. And in the evening, I ate dosa at the Saravana Bhavan, which was delicious. And later on, we grabbed a few beers and enjoyed the sunset at the banks of the Mainz River. So that completes the list of German cities. Now moving on to Spain. So I did a 10-day trip to Spain with my friend Dhruv, who had traveled from the US, and our plan was to go to major cities like Barcelona, Madrid, and Sevilla, and do a day trip from there. As both of us are architects, we were just in awe of the architecture that Spain had to offer. We did miss the cities of Valencia and Cordoba, but that's something we plan to do in the future. Starting with the capital, Madrid, we stayed in a hostel at the city center near Plaza de Mayor. From here, most of the places were at a walking distance, like the Royal Palace and the Almudena Cathedral. During the sunset, we visited the Retiro Park, which is something you should not miss. And if you are a football fan, then don't miss the vibes at the Santiago Bernabeu. And next up, we have is Toledo, which is an hour away from Madrid, a beautiful town. As soon as you get out of the railway station, you can feel that you have entered a different era. A bus away is the city center where the famous Alcazar and the Toledo Cathedral lie. However, my favorite spot is on the other side of Toledo, called the Mirador, from where you get a dreamy view of this town, which is absolutely gorgeous. Make sure to not miss that one as well. From Madrid, we were off to Sevilla, which was a 3-hour train ride. The south of Spain is so rich in its culture, food, and architecture that it is evident as soon as you enter Sevilla. My favorite view of the city was this modern parametric bridge called Setas de Sevilla, which was like a walking distance from our hostel. Another great masterpiece is the Plaza de España. It feels like a different era out there. And also try the famous sangrias in Sevilla. Next up, we did a day trip to Granada, which is like a 2-hour train ride from Sevilla. This was a little ambitious of us as Granada is a very mountainous area and we had to trek a lot that day. Also, apparently, Alhambra is one of the most visited places in Spain. So, us not buying the tickets in advance meant we couldn't see it from the inside. However, again, like all the other Spanish cities, the view from the Mirador, which is like an opposite side where you can see the entire city, was again a sight to behold. Next up is Barcelona, and Barcelona is an architect's dreamland. I was just in awe of like gaudy structures of La Pedrera, Casa Batillo, and the Sagrada Familia. We walked and trekked the most in Barcelona, and it was totally worth it. Barcelona's famous urban planning, the super blocks, is quite evident from this point called bunkers, or even from Park Güell. I was fortunate enough also to see the last football match played in the old Camp Nou, which is being renovated currently. The vibes are just unmatchable. From Barcelona, we were off to Girona, which is famously known for being Game of Thrones shoot locations, and it's an hour away train ride from Barcelona. The Girona Cathedral and the nearby streets feels like you are in the medieval times. Again, a bit of the hilly region, which meant we had to walk quite a bit, but it was totally worth it. And that completes my list of Spanish cities. Next up is France. And in France, I only visited Paris as I did not have enough time to explore the other cities. I met a school friend one evening where we had an amazing dinner and walked by the Seine River. For most part, Paris was sort of a solo trip for me, which meant I traveled in the metro trains and explored the city on my own. The architecture of Paris is as beautiful as I have seen in movies, especially during the sunset when the golden light hits the white facades of the buildings. My core memory though is the sunset at Eiffel. It was truly magical, and I'm glad I was able to experience it. And that's it from France. Next up we have is Netherlands. Stayed at my uncle's place in Apeldoorn. So Apeldoorn is this quaint little city in Netherlands that radiates calmness and peace. I visited the recently renovated Heitlu Palace, and I love the documentation of this entire renovation process that's at display in the museum. Another place I visited in Apeldoorn was the monkey park. Different species of monkeys out playing in the open is a joy to watch, and I loved how all these kids were so excited in this park. Next up is the modern city of Rotterdam, a city that was heavily bombed in 1940s during the war. It is built from ground up, and that's kind of quite evident with the amount of modern structures that you will see in the city. It literally feels like a playground for modern architects. I visited the Modern Art Museum of Depot van Bogeman and walked across the Erasmus Bridge to visit the Rotterdam Architecture Month that was happening in June 2023. From Rotterdam, a train ride away is the city of Delft. Delft kind of has two parts, with one being the university side and the old city side. I was joined by my friend Pratika, who studied there and works there, and who showed me around the campus. And then we ended up walking across the canals to the city center. A sort of mixture of old world charm and modern architecture describes Delft the best. Another great city in Netherlands was Utrecht. I was hosted by my friends Jasper and Laura, whom I met in a hostel in Kochi in January this year. It was one of the most adventurous days of my trip as we walked across the city, tasting beers, cycling through the forest, canoeing in the river, and finally celebrating my birthday at the banks of the river. It is definitely one of my most memorable day, and the canals and the two-step section of the roads of the Utrecht is one of my favorite features. And To the last city in this list is Amsterdam, which, as you know, is a very popular tourist destination, which also means it's quite super crowded depending upon the time you visit. The weekend I visited was also one of the hottest in Amsterdam, which drained my energy a lot. Amsterdam has a lot to offer if you plan to stay for around 2 to 3 days. As I did a day trip, I walked across the entire city to different attraction points like the Anne Frank house, and I also spent a considerable amount of time in the Van Gogh Museum looking at his beautiful paintings and learning about his journey. And that completes the long list of cities that I've visited in Europe. And I'm so glad I was able to experience Europe the way I always wanted to. I hope you enjoyed the video. Let me know in the comments what you feel about it. Thank you for watching and see you again next time. Bye.